Good morning. I hope I sound a little better. I'm trying to use a little better mic and I'm trying to speak more from the chest so that my voice doesn't sound so much like I'm out of breath. I am working out every day and getting better breathing. So my voice should sound a little better as we go along. I wanted very quickly to compare uh, this year's Purdue team with its dominant big man and great guard with the 1980 Purdue team with its dominant big man, Joe Barry Carroll, and its great guard, Keith Edmondson. One of the things I'll point out is that 1980 team went to the Final Four. Joe Barry Carroll led the Big Ten in all kinds of offensive and defensive categories. Keith Edmondson was a great guard that everybody knew. He was a sophomore. Does that sound familiar? He was a sophomore going to go to the NBA, and he did. Joe Barry Carroll went to the NBA as well. That being said, the rest of the team contains a lot of names we longtime fans remember, and the bench consisted of players who would go on to become starters in the next year or two. That was the pattern for most teams in the 80s. Your younger players sat the bench unless they were really special. So all things being said, the rest of the team was decent and the bench was good. Looking at this year's team, there are several players on the bench that are going to be starting next year. They're very maligned. They keep saying Purdue has no depth. I think that's wrong. I think Purdue will win a game or two in the tournament based on somebody coming off the bench and surprising everybody. That being said, let's do a quick look at Joe Barry Carroll and his numbers, and you compare them in your mind with Zach Edey. Joe Barry Carroll shot 54% from the field to Zach Edey's 60%. His free throws were 66% to Zach Edey's 70 or 75%. He was first in points in the Big Ten. He scored 22.3. He was second in rebounds, just behind Herb Williams. Per game, he led in the Big Ten with 9.2. Block shots, he was second with 92 block shots for the thing, and he was first in field goal percentage, or the number rather, of field goals. So you had to look at that and say, sounds real familiar, doesn't it? Now the Purdue team itself went 23-10, not as good as this year's team, and they did not win the Big Ten. They finished third behind Indiana. Now they played Indiana 3 times, lost at Indiana, won at Purdue, and then beat Indiana on a neutral site in the tournament. So they were the better team. They just hit their stride late. Purdue never was rated first in the country, not with 10 losses. They wound up 20th. They were as high, I think, as 7th or 8th once or 1 week or so in the AP poll. So this team is certainly stronger against the rest of the field than the Purdue team was. What taught me to do this comparison was watching Zach Edey against Illinois get a pass on the left side of the lane, take 2 strides and do a hook shot and put it in from 7 feet from the right side. It was very smooth. He looked great. He reminded me as a dead ringer of a Joe Barry Carroll move. Joe Barry Carroll wasn't as big, but he was big. He was well built, and he was very smooth. He'd been playing basketball all his life. He was an extremely talented player. And the coach, Lee Rose, moved on after he graduated, probably because he wasn't going to have he wasn't going to have Joe Barry the next year, and it was going to be a bit down after that. But at any rate, and I also heard he didn't get the raise he wanted. These are old stories at Purdue, aren't they? Now you look at Zach Edey, very similar pattern to Joe Barry Carroll. I frankly think that Smith is a better guard, point guard than Edmondson. Dick Morris was actually the point guard. And there's a better supporting cast all the way around. They score more points. They win by bigger margins. People complain about Purdue only winning by 5 or 6 points. The 1980 team averaged winning by 2 points. So you look at that and you go, oh, this is a better team. Feel better about it. The first 2 games of the tournament were played at Purdue. Not an advantage that this year's team's going to have, but they're going to be playing at Indianapolis, and hopefully there'll be some fans there. Should be. So I look at this and I have take great cheer from it, great hope, and I look at the experts and I go, bah, humbug to you guys. Have a good day and be of good cheer.